She put the gun in the car. The gun, she shot her? This girl right here. She shot her. She shot her. She put the gun in the car. She put the gun in the car. The gun is in the car. Arrest her.
She was the baby, but she was the leader. The holidays are not holidays.
All for you. It was all for you.
Your 6-month baby is in a car. Come to the other side and shoot my baby in the face. Then shoot her in the side, then shoot her in the leg.
Oh, you're going to...
You was intentionally trying to kill my daughter. For what? Because Carlos couldn't stop loving her?
On a Monday morning in Chicago, a young mother packed her little boy's lunch, tucked a sweet note inside the box, and drove him to school the same way she did every other day. She never made it back home, and what a courtroom would later hear about her last few minutes is going to sit heavy on you.
He then slammed a car door on Blackman and also put her in a chokehold. Prosecutors say Johnson broke free, and that is when, or I should say Blackman broke free, and that is when Blackman was shot once, and then that's when they say Johnson paused, then fired 2 more times.
Her name was Romika Blackman, and before that day, she was just a mom trying to get her son to class on time. That is the first thing you should hold on to as we go through all of this, because by the time we are done, you are going to see the same shape 3 different times in 3 different cities with 3 different families left standing over a body. Somebody loved somebody. Somebody else could not stand it. And a person who was supposed to be nothing more than the extra one in a love triangle showed up with a weapon and decided to end a whole life over it. Here is the second thing that should stop you cold before we even really start. On the morning she died, Romika had already sat down and written her boy a little message and slipped it into his lunchbox, and it later spread all over the internet because it read like a goodbye that nobody knew was a goodbye. The note said, "Happy Monday, son. This is a fresh start to this day, and you can start off strong. Always remain yourself. You're the coolest, smartest, and funniest kid I know. I love you so much. Love, Mommy." She wrote that a few hours before a woman she had reportedly never even met face-to-face pulled a gun on her right across from a school, with children and parents standing close enough to see. But before we get into Romika's story, let's start with this one, because it happened first, and it lays out the pattern you are about to keep seeing in the clearest way possible. This one comes out of Texas, and it is about a woman named Brittany who was hours away from finally closing the worst chapter of her life, when somebody decided she was not going to get that fresh start at all. She had done everything right. She had lawyered up, she had a court date on the calendar, and the very same day that was supposed to set her free became the day her family had to plan her funeral.
We begin with the KHOU 11 exclusive tonight. A difficult story. A woman is murdered just hours before signing divorce papers.
Brittany Naciel Richard was born on April 19, 1991 in Galveston, Texas, and she came up in the tight little world of Lamarck and Texas City on the Gulf Coast, the kind of place where half the people at your funeral are cousins, and everybody knew you since you were small. Family members always reached for the soft words when they described the girl she had been, that she was sweet, that she was well-mannered, that she was the one people leaned on when they needed guidance. She grew into a woman who worked for years as an accountant for the city of Lamarck and ran a catering business on the side with her own mother, the kind of woman who loved planning events, singing, dancing, and being surrounded by her people. And more than anything else, she was a mother to 2 kids, a daughter and a son who were around 13 and 9 years old when she was taken. By the summer of 2024, Brittany was 33, and she was almost out of a marriage that had already fallen apart. She was in the last stretch of divorcing her estranged husband, Aaron Cole, the father of her 2 children. And the thing that broke the marriage, according to her family and to the community around her, was that Cole had started up with another woman named Shanice Felder. You will see that name spelled a few different ways in the coverage, sometimes Shanice, sometimes Shinice. But this is the woman at the center of all of it. Now here is a detail that shapes the whole rest of this, because Brittany and this other woman had never met, never argued, and no personal history at all. They were complete strangers to each other. The only thing that connected them was one man. Think about how strange that is for a second. Most of the fights we hear about come from years of buildup, two people who cannot stand each other finally boiling over. This was not that. This was two women who had never once been in the same room, and one of them still decided the other one had to die. And the only reason underneath it was a marriage that was already ending anyway. That is what makes the affair the true fuse here, because without Aaron Cole in the middle, these two women would have lived their whole lives never knowing the other one existed. And the terms of that divorce are part of why the timing felt so ugly to everyone who knew her. According to the arrest affidavit later described in local reporting, Cole was set to owe child support and alimony and would only get a quarter of the marital home when it sold. And Brittany was going to sign those final papers on August 30th, 2024, and start over as a single mom with some stability finally coming her way. A relative would later tell police flat out that it was not a coincidence that she was killed just hours before she could put her name on that dotted line. The people who raised her and grew up beside her painted a picture of a woman built for other people. Her nurturing spirit was the kind that got sought out, and she poured it into her kids, into her catering work with her mother, into planning the gatherings that kept a big family close. There was even a woman she thought of as a second mother, and cousins and aunts stacked up around her by the dozen. That's the life that was about to get a fresh start. A woman who had already survived a bad marriage and was walking straight toward the calmer version of everything. More time with her children, a home she partly owned, a name back that was only hers. So on the night before, she did what she always did when there was something to celebrate. She got together with family for a cousin's birthday, and they hit a few spots around town, laughing and loving on each other the way close families do. The last stop was a sports bar in Texas City called Time Out, and that's where the new beginning she had been fighting for got ripped away from her. To understand exactly how it happened, we have to slow all the way down and walk into that bar. It was around midnight when everything fell apart. The way police and the family later pieced it together, a younger cousin in Brittany's group came out of the restroom and got jumped by two women. And Brittany did what a lot of us would do without even thinking about it. She stepped in to protect her family. That's the moment Shanice Felder pulled a blade she had been carrying in her shirt and started cutting. When it was over, Brittany had been stabbed 9 times, and her cousin Shemetria, who everybody called Tootie, was stabbed 3 times. Tootie survived and was hospitalized. Brittany was rushed to the hospital too, but there was nothing anybody could do for her, and she was pronounced dead before the sun even came up. Listen to her own mother describe the moment she finally reached her daughter, because it tells you everything about what this family walked into that night.
When I touched her body, close to 2 o'clock, she was cold.
That was a mother touching her child and finding her already gone. And the thing that made it cut even deeper is that there was no history between these two women. No beef, no bad blood, nothing at all that Brittany did for herself. She was a stranger to the person who killed her, standing up for a cousin on the last night before the best day she had planned in years. Her family kept circling back to how senseless it was, how there was nothing to explain it.
No one child deserves to die like that. No one. And it's wrong, and it was horrific, and it was just terrible.
The police in Texas City did not sit on this one. Detectives, including a lead investigator who handled the phone analysis, pulled surveillance video from 2 different bars and got into the cell phones, and what they found is the reason this case turned out the way it did. The video and the phone data showed that Felder and the people with her had been watching Brittany's group come into the bar, tracking their movements, sitting there like they were waiting for something. And bar staff would later testify that Felder walked in talking like she already knew something was about to pop off. Bar employees would go on to testify that when Felder came through the door, she said something to the effect that things were about to pop off, which is not the kind of thing you say by accident when you have no idea the other person is even in the building. The phone evidence backed that up, showing her group was aware of Brittany's group and watching them the whole time, which cut the legs out from under any idea that Felder simply stumbled into a fight she did not start. A warrant went out fast, and the arrest came a few days later.
This week, 35-year-old Shanice Felder was arrested in Houston.
You have the right to retain counsel. You have the right to remain silent.
This is video of her magistrate court appearance in the Galveston County Jail, where she's being held on a combined bond of $450,000 on 2 separate charges.
One is a charge of murder.
So Felder was booked on a murder charge and an aggravated assault charge with a total bond of $450,000. A grand jury indicted her on both counts, and the case rolled slowly toward a trial that would not come until the spring of 2026. And the whole time, Brittany's mother kept asking the one question that never got a good answer. Why? And why that night of all nights?
And that the attack inside the bar was unprovoked.
If I can ask her anything, I would ask her why. And why that night?
When that trial finally started in April of 2026, the defense tried to sell the jury a story that Felder was the one who got mobbed, that she was defending herself in the middle of a chaotic brawl. The problem for that version was the tape. The multiple angles of surveillance video showed that Felder was the only person who drew and used a weapon, that she stood apart, stepped back, and pulled the blade from her shirt before going to work on 2 people. Prosecutors from the Galveston County District Attorney's Office put up the cell phone extractions that showed her group lying in wait, and even Aaron Cole, the husband at the center of everything, took the stand for the defense and reportedly changed his story more than once while he was being questioned. The prosecution team leaned hard on the objective stuff, the kind of evidence that does not care whose side you are on. The video from every angle and the data pulled off 4 different phones showing the group tracking Brittany's people as they came in. That is the thing about cases like this one. Feelings and stories can go back and forth all day, but a camera does not lie, and a phone does not forget. When the defense told the jury that Felder was the victim of a mob, the tape simply showed the opposite, that she was the only one who came with a weapon and used it. The jury did not need long with all of that in front of them. They came back in less than 2 hours with a guilty verdict on both counts. Watch the moment the sentence came down.
Defendant Shanice Felder, seen here on the first day of her trial, was sentenced to 35 years Monday after a jury found her guilty of murder.
Felder was given 35 years for the murder and 8 more for the aggravated assault, and Brittany's mother found a strange, painful kind of meaning in that number because her daughter's birthday was in April and she would have turned 35 herself right around then.
35 years, it'll work for me because Brittany's birthday was on April the 19th, and she would have been 35.
She predicted that time. She got 35 years for her 35th birthday.
None of it brings her back, though, and that's the part the family keeps living inside of every single day. They set up a fundraiser for the kids, held a vigil, wore shirts with her face on them, and talked about the reality of raising 2 children who now grow up passing their mother's remains in the house.
They pass an urn every day with their mother in it. That's how they see their mother, in an urn.
There's a small mercy buried in the timeline, if you can even call it that. The cousin who got attacked first, Tootie, lived, and she carried the memory of watching Brittany get taken down and get back up before it was over. The family said the surveillance video was played again and again during the trial, and more than once, relatives had to leave the courtroom because they couldn't sit through it.
Her falling out, her getting back up, it was awful. I had to leave the courtroom numerous times.
The community held a vigil. They raised money to help with the funeral and the children's future, and they buried a 33-year-old woman who had done nothing but try to protect somebody she loved. Now her 2 kids are being raised without her, and every good thing she was about to walk into got frozen the second that blade came out. If you feel like you've heard a version of this before, you have, and not just in Texas. Look at what happened in Tamarack, Florida a couple of years earlier because it's almost the same story wearing different clothes. A woman named Sakenia Thompson traveled all the way from New York down to Florida and stabbed 23-year-old Kayla Hodgson dozens of times in the summer of 2022, and the reason was the same reason, jealousy over a man they had both been tied to.
Prosecutors argued she flew in ready to do it, then tried to clean up the scene afterwards and claim self-defense. And just like in Brittany's case, the evidence buried that claim. The jury took about an hour, convicted her of first-degree murder, and she got life without parole. Two women in different states and the same twisted logic running underneath both of them, that if a man leaves and finds somebody new, somebody has to bleed for it. Hold that thought, because now we go back to Chicago and to Romika, and you're going to watch this exact pattern turn a school drop-off into a crime scene. Romika Blackman was 31 years old, an aspiring nurse, and by the accounts of the people who loved her, she was the light of their whole friend group, described after her death as an outstanding mom who always showed up for her son and had the purest soul. She shared a young son with a man named Carlos Smith, who some people online know by his rap name Losoway, and the two of them had a long, tangled history that reportedly went back around 9 years. By the fall of 2025, Carlos had a new girlfriend named Quadaja Johnson, who a lot of people called Holly, and Johnson and Carlos had a baby of their own who was only 6 months old. So now you have the setup you already know how to read. A man in the middle, the mother of one of his kids on one side, and the mother of his newest baby on the other, with all the tension that comes with that. By every account from her side, Romika was chasing a bigger life. She wanted to be a nurse, she was raising her boy as the center of her whole world, and the people around her described her as the one who kept the friend group together, the funny one, the one with the big heart who showed up. Her son was 6 that fall, the kind of kid who needed his mom for everything, and she was the kind of mom who packed the lunch and wrote the note and did the drop-off herself. That ordinary morning routine is exactly what makes this so hard to swallow, because there was nothing about that Monday that should have ended the way it did.
There was real fear in this picture before anybody got hurt, and it was written down on paper. Romika's family says she had taken out a restraining order against Carlos that was simply being ignored. On the other side, Johnson had reportedly filed her own order of protection against Romika earlier that summer, though it was never actually served on her. So both women, in their own way, had already told a court that they were scared of something, and none of that paperwork managed to keep the three of them apart on the one morning it truly counted, which is a failure that Romika's family and her whole community keep pointing to. That morning was September 8th, 2025. Romika did her normal routine, packed the lunch, wrote that note we started with, and dropped her 6-year-old off at his school in the South Loop. What happened next is where the accounts split hard, depending on who was telling it, and we are going to be honest about that split the entire way through, because this case is still not finished, and a lot of it has to get fought out in front of a jury. What is agreed on is that shortly after 9 in the morning, Romika ended up back in the same area as Carlos and Johnson, near where Carlos stayed, and an argument started between them. According to the prosecution's account laid out in court, Carlos grabbed Romika and put her in a chokehold, and while he was holding her, Johnson, who had their 6-month-old right there in the car, got a gun and shot Romika multiple times at close range, hitting her in the face and the thigh. Prosecutors say there was a pause in the middle of it, that the first shot went off, and then Johnson stopped before firing 2 more times, and that detail about the pause is going to come back around when we get to the self-defense argument. Romika was rushed to Stroger Hospital and pronounced dead. Police recovered 3 shell casings at the scene, and Romika bled out against a car before the ambulance could save her. She left behind a little boy who turned 7 just days after his mother was killed and kept asking where she was. Hear a reporter lay out the coldest facts of it, the ones that make the self-defense claims so hard to accept for so many people.
Johnson legally owned the gun and claimed self-defense. Prosecutors say Blackman was unarmed. Her son turned 7 days after the shooting and is still asking to this very day, where is his mother?
You should also know that even the legal experts watching this case from the outside were careful about it early on, because so much of the evidence was disputed, and no full video of the shooting itself had come out. Analysts pointed out that whether a self-defense claim works comes down to whether Johnson truly faced an imminent threat and whether shooting was a proportional response, and they admitted plainly that the public did not have all the facts yet. That caution matters, and we are going to keep it in mind, because it's easy to convict somebody in your head from a couch. What we do know is that this was not two people who bumped into each other for the first time and lost control. Romika and Carlos had a history that reportedly stretched close to 9 years, long enough to have a child together, and long enough for all the old feelings, the hurt and the resentment, to still be sitting right there under the surface. Add a new woman and a new baby into that, and you have a pressure cooker that had been building for a long time before it ever went off in that street. Now, for the first time, you can hear from the one man who was standing right there, the father of Romika's son, when he spoke to a reporter about what came out in court.
When I heard it, I'm just looking, it was unbelievable, but I was there. And I know for a fact none of that happened, how they just explained it.
Carlos has not been charged with murder in this case, and he says his side has not fully come out yet. Whether you believe him or not, keep in mind that his account is just one piece of a puzzle that a jury has not weighed, and his role in restraining Romika is exactly the thing her family says makes him just as responsible as the person who pulled the trigger.
That's really it. I can't even say too much right now, because it's just gonna feel like I'm going against them, they going against me, we just going back and forth, but the truth is gonna come out.
Here is the piece that pulled the whole country into this case and turned it from a local tragedy into a national argument. Witnesses and surveillance reportedly showed that Johnson fist-bumped Carlos while Romika lay dying on the ground, with shell casings scattered nearby, one of them even resting on the windshield of a car. That single image, a fist bump over a dying mother, is the thing people could not get past, and it's a big reason the pressure kept building for months, even after Johnson was let go without charges at first. And that lunchbox note took on a whole life of its own once people connected it to how the day ended. A mother sat down that morning and told her baby he was the coolest, smartest, funniest kid she knew, that this was a fresh start, that she loved him so much. She had no way of knowing those were some of the last words she would ever leave him. A little boy grew up overnight into a kid who asks where his mother is and doesn't get an answer, and the people around him are left trying to hold a legacy together for a kid who was too young to understand any of it. That release, that stretch of time where nothing happened at all while the family screamed for someone to be held accountable, is the next turn in this story. For nearly 3 months, Johnson walked free. She had been detained at the scene and then released while the investigation continued because she had a valid concealed carry license and she was claiming self-defense. And at that early stage, prosecutors didn't feel they had enough to bring a charge. To Romika's family, that felt like a second wound laid right on top of the first, and they said so loudly and often. Romika's mother, Tina McMiller, stood at a vigil in West Englewood and said the kind of thing no parent should ever have to say, that she was broken, so broken. And as the wait dragged on, she put it plainly that she just wanted justice for her daughter and some peace for her family after such a hard 3 months. She put it even simpler at one point, saying somebody had to pay for this. And you can hear in that the exhaustion of a mother who buried her child and then had to watch the person accused of killing her walk around free while everybody argued about it online. There was also real anger about the gun, because in the weeks after the shooting, there was talk that Johnson's concealed carry license was not being pulled and that she could legally keep carrying a weapon while all of this played out. One true crime commentator covering the case laid that out and didn't hide how he felt about it.
Her CCL, her gun, and her gun license are not being revoked. She will be able to legally continue to carry a weapon, and she will be able to continue to be licensed under the CCL.
While the family waited, the internet did what the internet does, and it split into 2 camps that went to war in the comments and in reaction videos. On one side, you had people who saw an ambush, a setup, a man holding a woman still so his new girlfriend could shoot her. On the other side, you had Johnson's friends and family flooding social media to paint Romika as the real aggressor, the stalker, the one who kept pulling up and would not let it go.
Johnson's aunt reportedly put out video compilations, and old clips got resurfaced by people close to Johnson to try to flip the story. The narrative from that side was that Romika had a history of pulling up on Johnson and Carlos, that she had allegedly attacked Johnson before, and that on that day she came back around after the drop-off and would not let it go. Some of it came from an associate whose own mother had babysat Johnson as a child, telling viewers to go look at footage that supposedly showed Romika stalking Carlos and pressing his doorbell. None of that has been tested in a courtroom, and Romika's family says the clips are chopped up to make her look like the villain, so treat all of it as exactly what it is, an argument from one side. We are going to show you both sides, because that is the honest way to do this. But understand as we go that these are unproven claims from people who have already picked a side, not findings from a court. Here is the version from a woman who says she has known Johnson since kindergarten, reading a statement she posted online, and to her credit she gave Romika a little more humanity than most of that noise did. And then, on the same platform, someone hit right back with a completely different read, one that put all of it squarely on Johnson. Again, this is online talk, not evidence, but it shows you how hot this thing got and how quickly people were ready to bury each other from behind a screen. Eventually, the machinery of the law caught all the way up. On December 4th, 2025, Quadasia Johnson was charged with first-degree murder, and a judge ordered her held without bond after ruling she was a danger. Johnson was also pregnant at the time, and she reportedly asked the court for leniency so she could go back and forth from home while awaiting trial, which the judge did not allow. Her defense still leans on that concealed carry license and on the argument that she genuinely feared for her life, and her side insists she had never even met Romika in person before that day. But prosecutors keep coming back to that pause between the shots and the fist bump afterward, saying those two things do not look like fear. They look like something much colder. If she is convicted, she's looking at the possibility of life in prison. None of that is settled yet, and all of it still has to be proven to a jury. The bigger thing this case put a spotlight on is how often the paper meant to protect people ends up meaning nothing at all. Romika had an order against Carlos that was ignored. Johnson had an order against Romika that never got served. Two women told the system they were afraid, and the system did not keep any of them safe, and a child lost his mother anyway. That's the part Chicago keeps arguing about, the delay before charges, the failure of orders that only exist on paper, and how a legally owned gun ended up doing what it did in front of a school. And history says self-defense claims in these love triangle situations rarely hold when the evidence points the other way. You can go back further than Rachel Wade to cases like Sally McNeil, who shot her husband and ran a battered woman defense and was still convicted, because juries want to see a real immediate threat, not just a claim of fear after the fact. This kind of self-defense fight is not new either, and there's a case out of Pinellas Park, Florida, that shows you how these usually land when the evidence points to intent. Back in 2009, a 19-year-old named Rachel Wade stabbed 18-year-old Sarah Ludman to death during a roadside confrontation, and the whole thing had grown out of a love triangle over one young man, fed for months by threatening calls, messages, and online taunts. Wade took the stand and argued self-defense, saying she was smaller and afraid, but prosecutors pointed to the threats she had made ahead of time and to the fact that she armed herself and then approached the confrontation. The jury took less than 3 hours and convicted her, and she got 27 years. The lesson that keeps repeating in cases like this is saying you were scared only carries you so far once the evidence shows you brought the weapon and closed the distance yourself. Whether Johnson's claim holds up where Wade's didn't is the question Chicago is still waiting on, and it will come down to what a jury makes of that pause between the shots, that fist bump, and the simple fact that Romika had no weapon on her at all. Until then, a little boy is being raised by relatives, a family is still fighting for a trial to give them answers, and a whole city is watching to see whether the system finally moves the way they say it should have moved from day one. And now we turn to the third story, which flips the whole thing around, because this time the person killed over a love triangle wasn't the woman at all, it was the man. Martz Hurt went by Money-Makin' Martz, And if you want to understand why his death hits people so hard, you have to understand how far he had already climbed by the time it happened. He was born around 1992 in Washington, D.C., and he came up in low-income parts of the city, the kind of start that swallows a lot of kids whole. He did not let it swallow him. As a teenager, he earned that nickname the honest way, hustling sodas and water on the street, and by 17 he had turned that same drive into something real, landing roughly $150,000 in scholarship money through a foundation backed by big-name philanthropists, and heading to Florida A&M University to study criminal justice. For a kid from where he was from, that move to Florida was a whole new world. He had gotten into a long list of schools and even became a face for the foundation that helped fund him, the sort of program backed by heavy hitters like Bill Gates, which tells you how much people believed in him early. He would later admit he blew through some of that money living the college life and went broke before he graduated, which is a very human thing to do at that age. And he came out the other side even more focused on making his own way. At school, he chased two dreams at the same time: the degree and the music, and he used rap to tell his own story with a message that was actually about building yourself up instead of tearing anybody down. He dropped a mixtape called Boss, which stood for Built on Self-Success, and he shared stages with real names like Kendrick Lamar and Bobby Shmurda while he was still coming up in Tallahassee. He performed at FAMU's homecoming, opened for established artists, and recorded in real studios, building a name in Tallahassee the hard way, one show and one connection at a time. He kept releasing music, singles and freestyles, and he sold CDs and merch and stacked up thousands of views because he simply would not stop networking and grinding. To him, the rap was never just about being famous. It was about giving kids from neighborhoods like his a role model who had actually made it out. Somebody who could stand up and say, "Look, I came from nothing and I built this, so you can too." He turned the music into a whole operation, selling CDs nationwide, launching a clothing line built around that boss idea, and even doing motivational speaking, because his real message was always the same, that a kid with nothing could build something out of self-belief and grind. He weathered real loss along the way, too, including his mother passing in 2015, and he kept leaning on his faith and his work to carry him through it. People who knew him back then all described the same thing: a jokester off the mic and an engine that would not quit on it. A man who treated hustle like a religion. After college, he set his sights on Texas and moved out there chasing more opportunity, more music, more of the life he had been building brick by brick. There is a recording of him sitting on a small Christian radio show, listening to a mentor speak over his future like a prayer, warning him that when your light shines bright, people come for it, telling him to keep his circle tight and to stay alert for the people who mean him harm. It's hard to listen to now because of one line in particular that lands like a warning nobody managed to heed.
Protect him.
Amen.
Cover him.
Amen.
And don't let nothing get him sidetracked, women included.
Amen.
On that same show, they talked openly about him making the move to Houston, about him bringing family down with him and building a team he could trust. All of it framed as this bright next chapter he was walking into. He was excited, he was hungry, he had plans. Somebody spoke a warning over this man about a woman throwing his life off track, months before a situation tied to a woman did exactly that. And it's the kind of thing that only feels heavy once you know how the story turns out. By the fall of 2020, Martz was 28 and he was dating a woman in the Houston area. The catch, and it was a deadly one, was that she had an ex-husband named Matthew Rashawn Jacobs, and Jacobs could not let the marriage go. This is where the pattern from the first two stories flips completely inside out. Same triangle, same jealousy, same refusal to accept that a person had moved on. Except this time the one who could not let go was the man, and the target was the new boyfriend who had done nothing but fall for somebody who was already free to be fallen for. The warning signs were loud, and this is the part that makes it so hard to sit with. Fort Bend County deputies had already been out on 3 domestic violence calls involving Jacobs and his ex-wife back in March of that year, months before Martz was killed. So there was already a documented pattern, and Martz himself told people he was being watched and followed. His family said he believed Jacobs had put a tracker on the couple and was monitoring where they went, and a friend spelled that fear out plainly to a reporter.
I think the ex-husband put a tracking device on her car or either her phone, so he would pull up sometimes when they would be chilling at night and like send pictures of her vehicle parked outside.
It went further than pulling up and sending pictures. Reports describe a fistfight between the two men in a Target parking lot a couple of months before. And then something even scarier. An incident where Jacobs allegedly waited inside Martz's own vehicle with a gun, having gotten in using keys and a tracking device. Sit with that for a second, because a man hiding in your car with a gun is not a jealous ex blowing off steam. That is somebody rehearsing. The signs were not subtle, and the people closest to Martz saw them, which is what makes the ending so painful to talk about. His aunt, Martz Hurt, had begged him to end the relationship for his own safety, and Martz had told her he understood the danger, but the Jacobs already knew where he lived.
When he told me that the guy followed him to his house, he said, Mommy, he know where I live at. I said, Martz, you need to leave the girl alone.
His aunt had told him straight up to leave the girl alone, and he had heard her, and he had told her he would break it off soon. He just kept pushing it back a little, the way people do when the danger feels like somebody else's problem, right up until it is standing at their car window. He had agreed to walk away. He had promised his family he would end it. He just did not do it fast enough. And a week of hesitation turned out to be the difference between a man with a whole future and a name on a fundraiser to ship a body home. And on the very morning it caught up with him, he had posted something sweet and hopeful to social media with no idea what the next hour held. To see how it ended, we have to go to a quiet cul-de-sac in the Sienna neighborhood of Missouri City. Set the scene the way local news said it that night, because they had already covered too many like it.
Bourbon cul-de-sac surrounded by crime scene tape after yet another domestic violence murder. Tonight, we're learning new details about a man killed outside of a home in Sienna.
It was the morning of October 26th, 2020, right around 8:30 as people in the neighborhood were heading out to work. Martz and his girlfriend pulled up to her home, and Jacobs was already there, waiting in the neighborhood for them to come back. The way deputies described it, once the woman got out of the vehicle, Jacobs walked up and opened fire through the window while Martz was still behind the wheel. Martz lost control, and the car crashed through a fence into a neighbor's backyard, and that is where he died. A neighbor heard the whole thing unfold from inside his own home and later described the awful rhythm of it.
I hear two shots simultaneously, and then I hear a scream, but it also kind of sounded like an engine screeching. About 30 seconds or so, not even 30, probably like 15 seconds pass by, and then I hear either 3 or 4 more shots, followed by another scream.
Surveillance in the neighborhood reportedly caught the whole ambush, and a reporter walked through exactly what those cameras showed.
You can see the suspect or the ex-husband approach the vehicle and fire several rounds into the driver's side window.
Then there's the detail that makes this one land as cold as it does. Neighbors said they watched Jacobs walk calmly back to his car with the gun still in his hand, like a man who had done exactly what he came to do and felt nothing about it.
Neighbors recalled seeing Jacobs walk calmly to his car with a gun in hand. After a 3-hour manhunt, Jacobs turned himself in.
Fort Bend County Sheriff Troy Knowles did not soften it either. He called the shooting an execution and pointed out that Jacobs walked away calmly afterward. The neighborhood got briefly locked down, and nearby schools were put on alert while a manhunt went on, all because one man decided he would rather end a life than accept that his marriage was over. After a manhunt that ran a few hours, Jacobs turned himself in and was charged with murder. And in January of 2021, a grand jury indicted him for first-degree murder. The timing of that last hopeful social media post is the thing his aunt could not stop thinking about.
He posted on social media yesterday morning, quote, "You deserve all good things life has to offer." Less than an hour later, he was dead.
That was the last thing this man put into the world, a kind word about somebody deserving good things, right before somebody took every good thing away from him. Watch a friend try to make sense of losing a man who had that much life in him.
This is all a surprise. This is a deep, this one is gonna hurt a lot of people.
and listen to the aunt who had seen the danger coming and could not stop it, asking the only question that was left to ask.
If she could speak to Jacobs, she says she would ask why.
He owed us an explanation. You gonna go out there and walk to his car and shoot him up like that?
Now there's an honest gap we have to point out, because we don't fake certainty around here. After that indictment in 2021, the public record on the case goes quiet, and there's no clean, confirmed public report of a trial verdict or a final sentence that we could stand behind. So what we can tell you for sure is that Jacobs ambushed Martz, walked away, turned himself in, and was charged and indicted for first-degree murder. And where the case landed after that is something the family has had to sit with far longer than anybody should have to. The community held a fundraiser, started by a cousin, to bring his body back home to D.C. And the tributes all said the same thing, that he was a hustler and a jokester with the best days supposedly still ahead of him. His friends were gutted, one of them saying at the scene that this was going to hurt a lot of people because so many of them knew him and loved him. And local coverage kept coming back to a bigger, quieter truth, that his death was one of a string of domestic violence killings the area had seen, and that the one domestic violence resource for that whole county had already helped hundreds of survivors that year alone. The people who work in that world will tell you the same thing every time, that leaving is the most dangerous moment, that the fear is real, and that help is out there if you can reach it in time. Martz's story also fits a bigger and uglier pattern in hip-hop, where a heartbreaking share of the artists who have died didn't pass any gentle way. They were killed, and often over something personal that spun out of control. You can look at cases like the Atlanta rapper Trouble, who was killed in 2022, reportedly by a woman's ex, and you see the same shape one more time. An artist with a future, taken over a love triangle that somebody refused to let die. The cities change and the details change, but the engine underneath keeps being the exact same one. It's worth saying out loud that in this genre, a painful number of the artists we have lost didn't go quietly. They were taken, and a lot of the time it traced back to something personal, a woman, a friend, a grudge, an ego that could not stand to lose. Martz wasn't a household name. He was still climbing, but that's almost what makes his story land harder, because he represented every independent grinder out there doing it the honest way, selling CDs out the trunk and dreaming out loud, only to get cut down right as the best days were supposed to arrive. So look at what we really have here when you line all three up. In Texas, Brittany was stabbed 9 times by a woman she'd never met, hours before she could sign the papers that would set her free. In Chicago, Romika was shot across from a school by her son's father's new girlfriend minutes after she tucked a love note into her boy's lunchbox. And in Texas again, Martz was ambushed in his own car by her girlfriend's ex-husband, a man who couldn't stand that she had moved on with her life. 3 people, 3 families, one idea running through it all, that another person's love or another person's exit is somehow worth killing over. It's not. And it never was. The child support, the divorce, the new relationship, none of it is worth a life. And every single one of these people could still be here if somebody had chosen to walk away instead of pull up. One of the people covering Romika's case said the thing that all 3 of these stories keep screaming, and it's worth hearing in plain words. That's the whole thing right there.
Today, somebody steps on your shoes, somebody looks at you crazy. Your goal is to get home, go have dinner with your loved ones, go have a drink tonight, lay in your bed, and wake up tomorrow.
If you're ever caught in the middle of a situation like the ones you just heard, the move is the same every single time. Get in the car, drive off, call somebody you trust, and let the courts and the paperwork handle what the courts and the paperwork are for. Your only goal is to make it home and see tomorrow. And no argument over a man or a woman is worth more than that. Somebody stepping on your pride doesn't owe you a body, and no relationship, no ego, and no jealousy is worth trading your freedom or your life for. Rest in peace to Brittany, to Romika, and to Martz. And if this reached somebody who's scared right now, or somebody who has a friend caught up in a situation that's starting to feel like one of these, share it with them. because a single conversation at the right moment has quietly pulled more than a few people back from the edge of a story that ends exactly like these three did.